In this edition of Southern Newsweek, we take a look at preparations for the next group of Syrian refugees. A group of employers meet with the Workplace Relations Minister to discuss health and safety concerns, and a gaggle of geese divides a harbourside community with some alternative suggestions added to the mix. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. The announcement that New Zealand's annual refugee quota will be increased from 750 to 1,000 is being welcomed locally. Although it falls short of some calls for the quota to be doubled, members of the city's refugee steering group say it's a step in the right direction. And with more Syrian refugees arriving in Dunedin, the group is focusing on what they can do to welcome those already on their way.
Taking a step in the right direction. Gerard Ainsley of the Dunedin Refugee Steering Group believes the government's decision to increase its refugee quota is good news, both for refugees and for the city.
Yeah, I think it's no doubt from our perspective it's very pleasing news to know that the quota is increased. Like right at the beginning when we started meeting, we hoped to be able to illustrate to the community and the government that we could do more than what we were doing with a bit of community support.
Ainsley says group members are currently busy getting everything ready for the next contingent of refugees arriving this Friday.
And everything's in place, that it's all working well, that they are able to integrate well. So we meet with the Red Cross and we meet with some of the government agencies involved with the resettlement, just looking to make sure now what's Dunedin's role in this and how can we as a city do it as well as we can.
He says the first group of Syrian refugees who arrived in April are settling in well and are being made to feel very welcome by Dunedin residents.
I know, for example, of one family that when they arrived from the aeroplane, that as they got to their home, the people from the street all came out and welcomed them. So really great stories like that, and wonderful to see that most are getting involved and learning English and doing their best to become integrated into Dunedin society.
Ainsley believes the steering group is more than prepared to welcome more refugees as the need arises. They'll prove that yet again at the end of the week when the next group of Syrian refugees arrives at Momona. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
Waititi residents may have a new addition to the area as the Dunedin City Council considers allowing a wind farm to be built. Blueskin Energy is proposing to install 3 wind turbines in the area to harvest energy. But there are a few issues to be clarified first.
A fight for renewable energy. Members of Blueskin Energy are fighting to get resource consent to build a new wind farm in Waititi. The public has had their say in the submission process already, and now it's time for any concerns to be laid to rest.
The response was really just to close off the hearing and respond to all the questions that have been raised by the Commissioner and the planner during the hearing process, after hearing all the submissions and after hearing all the expert evidence.
Blueskin Energy is proposing to install 3 wind turbines reaching 90 metres in height that would sit on top of Porteous Hill. The light grey turbines would generate 2.4 megawatts of energy each when operating at full capacity. Willis says while there's been some concerns raised by nearby residents, he believes they'll be outweighed by the benefits the project will bring.
This is a nationally significant project. It's clearly so through the National Policy Statement for Renewable Electricity Generation. It's New Zealand's first community wind farm. It helps with Dunedin's carbon emissions. It reduces our emissions by 966 tonnes per annum.
Some of the concerns that have been raised by residents include potential noise pollution, the tainting of groundwater and its visual impact on the landscape. But Willis says the group has done their research and provided evidence to show that the perceived issues will be mitigated.
We're very comfortable that we've provided very good evidence. We've done a lot of work, and there's a great example is the spring issue. I mean, we know we've got expert evidence that springs are not going to be an issue.
All the information provided is set to be considered in the decision on whether to grant consent decided in private. That decision is expected to be released by the end of June. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
Concerns about recent changes to the country's health and safety laws are being addressed by the Workplace Relations Minister. Michael Woodhouse has spoken with a group of employees representing around 50,000 workers in Otago. and he's hoping the conversation leads to real changes within workplaces.
Checking over his notes. Workplace Relations and Safety Minister Michael Woodhouse is one of those speaking at an event organised by insurance agents Gallagher Bassett. He's addressing around 50 delegates, representing tens of thousands of employees across Otago, to outline the recent changes to health and safety legislation.
I think the major changes that we've reflected what the modern workplace is. 25 years ago, organisations worked pretty much in a standalone capacity. Now in a shopping mall, a construction site, even a hospital, we could have dozens of different organisations working together. And what I want them to do is work together on the health and safety front as well.
He's pleased this event has been organised to bring key players together in one room. It's a way for him to clarify any misconceptions and hear firsthand about any perceived issues employers might have.
Well, firstly, I'm really encouraged that business leaders are coming along to have this conversation, because to me it says they're really tuned into this. But I also will be interested in hearing from them about what their early perceptions are and give them a sense of what the government's objectives are for this.
Woodhouse says these days health and safety isn't something that workplaces can afford to overlook. He says it's literally a matter of life and death, and he wants to eradicate the latter. He shares the sentiments of those workers who turned up to this year's Workers' Day memorial service that change is needed.
The fatality rate has already dropped by more than 25%, which is the target the government set for itself by 2020. The serious harm rate is also down by 6%. That's not as much as we'd like, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
Woodhouse says the most important thing he wants to see the new legislation address is workers' attitudes toward workplace health and safety. It's that change he hopes will lead to safer workplaces nationwide. Daryl Baser, 39 Dunedin News.
A Dunedin-based mountain biking club has won big at the annual Cycling New Zealand Awards. Mountain Biking Otago received 3 national accolades at the ceremony, including the coveted Club of the Year prize. But for one member, it's the personal recognition he received that's of the most value.
A literal handful of awards. Mountain Biking Otago member Chris Arbuckle is clutching the club's 3 awards won recently at the Cycling New Zealand Awards. But with a new club room in the planning stages, it's not clear where the honours will be kept.
Whenever we have a club rooms, the plan is ultimately where we're standing. There'll be hopefully a road put in here and a car park up on the top field above the Logan Park High School. And at some point we'll have club rooms there, whether they're part of a big sports hub that we've been involved in the thinking around, or we'll just put up a room and put stuff there. For the moment, they'll probably be displayed wherever we can put them.
Although the club has been running for 20 years, Arbuckle says a lot of the recognition it's received is fairly recent. He says it's unsurprising that it's taken a while for some people to take notice, as plenty of their work often goes unseen.
I think Mountain Biking Otago more recently is kind of probably getting more recognition for the stuff it does, mainly because people are probably seeing tracks on the hills and riding them, and more people riding their bikes, so they see our name out there.
As well as taking out the Club of the Year prize, Mountain Biking Otago also claimed the Best Competition of the Year for their secondary schools competition. But Arbuckle says it was having his individual efforts recognised that felt really special.
Personally, I got recognised for some of the effort we've put into schools mountain biking, and that's kind of nice. You get these awards basically through other people's efforts. So again, that's the club getting in behind the sport and making it all happen. So it looks pretty flash, sort of 3 awards for the efforts of the club in one fell swoop. It was kind of humbling to be standing up and getting those awards.
While the wintry weather is beginning to take hold locally, Arbuckle says the club still has plenty going on. Next up is a series of winter night riding events to be held at various locations around the city. Daryl Baser, 39 Dunedin News.
The days are numbered for a gaggle of geese who have been terrorising Roseneath and Port Chalmers residents over the past 2 months. A group of locals were given until this weekend to come up with a plan to save the birds from being shot. But opinion on the best way to move them on has been dividing the harbourside community.
A group of birds creating quite the mess. This gaggle of wild geese have been fouling the Watson Park Sports Ground in Port Chalmers since moving in around 2 months ago. Port Chalmers Community Board Chairman Steve Walker says it's a problem that isn't going away.
Primarily from the fouling of the geese. There's a little bit of destruction to the grass itself, obviously with the geese eating the grass, and also residents in Roseneath reporting that geese were breaking into the gardens and destroying primarily the vegetable beds.
The perceived menaces stayed mostly on the ground today, until local woman Beres Ford shooed them away. She says she's in favour of moving them on in a humane way.
The obvious solution for me would be for them to be rehoused or left alone, but obviously being left alone is already off the table. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there's too much animosity. So that's obviously off the table. So the next best solution would be to rehouse them.
The issue is causing division in the community, with arguments about the best way to deal with the problem. Resident Jackie Ruston says she has a direct solution that she believes could benefit the community.
I think the best solution being as how it's Matariki time of year here, that as a community we come together and make use of all the beautiful bounty that our nature has provided us in Port Chalmers. We have kaimoana, we have all sorts of wild fruit and vegetables in the area, and we have geese. And I think it'd be a really delicious thing for us to have a big feast at Pioneer Hall and celebrate Matariki and cook them up for the people.
But Dunedin City Council Parks and Reserves Manager Hamish Black says that's simply not going to happen.
Obviously in a normal hunting capacity, people do that. In this situation, the priority is to try work with the group to have a live capture and then relocate. If that's unsuccessful, then culling has seriously got to be re-looked at. But yeah, they wouldn't be made available for eating or anything like that.
Black says the problem has already cost the council around $3,000, as well as a considerable amount of time for both volunteers and paid contractors. With some weekend sports games having had to be shifted to other grounds, he's looking forward to the problem finally being resolved. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a historical event takes on a dramatic spin as its anniversary is commemorated, and fundraising goes swimmingly for a local school, so much so that work can now begin on a much needed pool upgrade. Welcome back. A group of high school students are putting a dramatic spin on an important historical event. It's been 176 years since the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in Otago during its tour around the country. So, to commemorate the date, Kavanagh College students have put pen to paper to write a play about the event.
He tangata, it's people. History is being brought to life by a group of Year 10 Kavanagh College drama pupils. They are marking 176 years to the day that a copy of the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in Otago. Kavanagh College head of drama Chris Manley says her pupils have learnt more than they expected in the process of putting this together.
So we've gone ahead and we've planned a performance this afternoon to commemorate the reenactment of the treaty. And when my Year 10 students started doing this, we decided that it would be rather nice to do a wee bit of time travelling.
Manley says the teenagers researched what happened on the day and who was involved before getting to work reenacting the occasion.
So initially we go back to our own region, but then when they want to understand what actually happened at Paihia, at actual Waitangi, they also go back to that moment as well. So we represent the actual signing of the treaty and then the treaty here in Dunedin.
She says this sort of practical hands-on education is far better than reading chapters from old history books.
We couldn't have learned as much sitting in a classroom just reading it out of a book. They've actually discovered the information and then they've put it into an amazing presentation.
Toitu Otago Settlers Museum Director Jennifer Evans watched the performance and says visitors and staff alike enjoy hosting live theatre at the venue.
It's great to have the space brought alive. You know, we've made sure there's spaces within the museum for performances. We've had a lot of dance, drama, plays, musical performances, and today's play is just another one of those. But it's fantastic to see the space being used and on-site drama specific to the area and bringing the history to life.
The school's production at Toitu is part of the museum's ongoing Matariki program this month. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
A group of school children are preparing to spend the night in refugee-like conditions to help raise money for those less fortunate. Liberton Christian school pupils are taking on the inventive challenge as part of this year's 40-hour famine, and they're looking to raise more than ever before.
Stirring the pot on a humanitarian crisis, Liberton Christian school pupils are preparing to spend the night in a makeshift refugee camp to raise funds for this year's 40-hour famine.
We're taking up the opportunity this year to support children who are refugees in Jordan in some really large refugee camps over there, and our kids have planned a great event tonight to help raise money and support those children.
50 children are getting involved in the challenge, setting up camp in a classroom and eating a similar amount to what those in a refugee camp would receive. They're also getting set to simulate the journey a refugee would take from their homeland to a camp by using a school-wide maze.
I'm taking part because I really want to help the refugee children and also want to feel what it's like to be in their shoes. I'm taking part because I feel like I've always wanted to help, but I've never really known why, and this is a really good way to help.
I'm taking part because I want to help. I just always like leading, I guess, you know, and I've always liked to help.
All the money pupils raise this year will go towards World Vision's efforts to create child-friendly spaces such as nail painting stations and refugee camps. This isn't the first time Liberton pupils have taken part in the weekend challenge. Last year, the Christian school that only boasts 80 pupils raised more than any Dunedin school. They fundraised $5,000 for the cause in 2015, a total they're hoping to exceed this year, but staff say it's about more than just making money.
It would be nice, but we actually don't put any pressure on our kids to raise a certain amount, so we never know what is going to happen until it's done, so we just wait and see what comes.
Following the famine weekend, World Vision New Zealand will use the money to fund child spaces, education programs and counselling in refugee camps. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
A local primary school will be refurbishing its swimming pool after hitting a fundraising goal. The pool at Carisbrook School has been out of action for over a year, with the damaged base causing severe leakage. But thanks to 2 recently received grants, school pupils will be swimming again as soon as September.
Getting one last look. Carisbrook School's pool is getting a revamp thanks to tens of thousands of dollars worth of grant money coming through.
We were very successful on both applications, Otago Community Trust and the Bendigo Foundation. And look, it's fantastic news because it means that we can reline our swimming pool so that not just our students, but students from other South Dunedin schools can start receiving their swim coaching sessions again.
More than $50,000 is set to go towards installing new lining to fix a major crack that caused severe leakage. Staff say the building facility is outdated and in much need of a spruce up. While they would like to upgrade the pool entirely, they're glad to finally be able to open after being closed for so long.
At this stage, look, the main priority for us, we'd love to refurbish the whole pool and the pool complex, but the priority was just to get the children back in the pool initially. So the $53,000 we've received is enough to pay for the relining of the pool.
Students have gone more than a year without swimming lessons since the pool's closure in April last year. It's not just Carisbrook school pupils that have been impacted, with nearby Bathgate Park School and St Bernadette School also frequent users of the facility. Staff are rapt to be moving ahead with work and open it up to the community once again.
We've got 3 other schools in the South Dunedin area that utilise our pool for swim coaching sessions, but we've also got it utilised in the weekends, Flippable, which is a junior water polo program. So we have teams from other schools in Dunedin come and hire the pool on the weekends too.
Work is set to begin in coming weeks to get the pool up and running by September. Following that, staff would like to begin work on beautifying the facility too. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, we'll find out what opportunities could open up for participants of a weekend music contest. And chess players gather for a rapid game. 100 young performers have taken part in Dunedin's annual chamber music competition. The event is aimed at spurring young musicians, regardless of experience, to compose and perform chamber music. And it's also a stepping stone to several other competitions nationwide.
Blowing up a storm. Competitors in the New Zealand Community Trust Chamber Music Contest blew, bowed and digitally flourished their hearts out in order to win entry to the national competition. Otago District Contest organiser Natasha Manovitz says although the classical music field stretches back many hundred years, many groups have chosen contemporary composers.
Music from the past few hundred years, Baroque music, romantic, classical music and contemporary music. There's a lot of music written by New Zealand composers and some composers who are also from Dunedin.
35 groups made up of more than 110 students put their best classical chops to the test against their peers, under the watchful gaze of adjudicator Douglas Beelman.
So it's been around for a really long time. So I think that there's been interest from the start and that interest has been sustained all the way through to today.
Manovitz says there are many talented young musicians coming up through the ranks locally. She says it's good to see the arts being taken seriously by those at a young age.
I think it says a lot about Otago's musical talent and how dedicated and hardworking high school students are. So you see it in all types of subjects and in sports and in the arts. And I think this is a good example of seeing how young students in high schools are getting together within the arts and spending their time doing something creative and expressive.
The local winners will now go on to the regional finals in Christchurch later this month, before the national finals in August. All while an immobile Ludwig van Beethoven listens intently. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
Hundreds of aspiring netballers have been put through their paces by some well-known national players. It's part of a New Zealand-wide workshop tour aimed at getting more young people to take up the sport. And with members of the Southern Steel on hand, there was plenty of inspiration for the youngsters.
Aiming for sporting success, these children are learning the fundamental skills of netball through a Future Ferns Festival Day.
The kids are here and they'll do 4 stations each, and as well as a game station. They'll also get to meet field players, so it's not just about them getting to learn about the game, but it's also about them meeting their heroes and a celebration of netball.
200 local children took part in the workshop at More FM Arena over the weekend. The program included mastering the basics of the game, like jumping, passing, catching and pivoting, with the help of Southern Steel players. The organisers believe it's important to teach the correct techniques at a young age so they can carry those skills through life.
Netball is the #1 female sport in New Zealand, and so we want to instill some really lifelong love of the game right from the beginning, right from when they're about 5, and so it's very important that we cater for all levels of the game with various options.
Netball South staff say the sport has a high uptake in Otago and Southland, especially in the junior section. As it is one of the most popular sports in the country, clubs want to create opportunities for young people to get involved socially and competitively. The main goal for organisers is to get children involved in sport and make sure they have fun at all levels.
Enjoyment probably is the biggest thing, just making sure they have a great day of netball, really enjoying themselves, having some fun and hopefully taking away some skills and some knowledge.
Dunedin is just one stop for the nationwide workshop, with organisers heading north to continue the tour. Annabelle Dick, 39, Dunedin News.
The recent chilly weather provided the perfect excuse for staying indoors for an informal rapid chess tournament. The winter tournament, held by the Otago Chess Club, was a chance for both novice and expert players to come together and compete. But the fast nature of the game meant it wasn't a completely relaxed affair.
Making the right moves. Both amateur and expert chess players are giving it their all for a rapid chess tournament hosted by the Otago Chess Club. Organisers say it's a way to give everyone an opportunity to play chess in a relaxed but quick way.
It's just the time limit that you have to play the game. So this is rapid, so that all the games have to finish within an hour of starting, which means we can ensure we get 5 games in between the start of the tournament and the end, and so everyone gets a minimum number of games.
A standard chess game can often take up to 4 or 5 hours, meaning it's difficult to play more than 1 game per day. The Rapid tournament gives all those involved the chance to get a few more games under their belt, regardless of skill level.
It's played on a Swiss system, which is common in chess. All the players play about 5 games throughout the day, and they're paired according to how their results go earlier on. They get to play, if they do well, they play stronger opponents. If they do not so well, they play weaker opponents. So you get to play kind of players about your strength by the end.
More than 20 people are taking part in the winter competition, a number Johnson says is very good. It's a fairly casual tournament, but he says its popularity remains consistent locally.
It's always got a general ground level of popularity. Chess has been popular for hundreds of years. There's a lot of other alternatives available these days, but generally there's always a few people who just want a good game of chess opposite a real human person in a room somewhere. So we cater for those that need.
Johnson says he's happy with the range of people taking part, from those with very little experience through to strong club players. While this tournament is a casual affair, the chess calendar ahead is a busy one, with the inter-school tournament and under-20 championships later this year. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And finally, book lovers have yet again swarmed the Regent Theatre for the beginning of the annual 24-hour book sale. It's the organisation's biggest fundraising event, with proceeds contributing to upgrades. And organisers say it simply could not happen without the raft of dedicated volunteers.
And they're off. A human tide of book fanatics are surging toward book-filled tables for the Regent Theatre's annual 24-hour book sale. Coordinator Alison Cunningham says the sale is an exciting annual event that simply couldn't happen without help from many volunteers.
All of the people that you see when you come to the theatre, the person who sells you your ice cream, the person who checks your ticket, the person who takes you to your seat, those people will be volunteers. And of course it was volunteers originally that raised the money to buy the building and stop it being turned into a car park. So we really wouldn't have a Regent without our fantastic volunteers.
She says until noon on Saturday, it's unlikely there's anywhere cheaper to buy a book citywide.
We try and make sure that we are the cheapest place you can buy books anywhere. The vast majority of the books we have for sale are $1 each, and they're blooming fantastic. And somebody's gone to the trouble of sorting them into categories for you. So if it's cookbooks or books about religion you want, somebody's already sorted them out for you. So it's not quite such a bun fight as it would be if we put 250,000 books out, just any old how.
While there isn't a capital project in the works currently, Cunningham says the funds raised will be put into an account ready for when large ticket items are needed to be bought or replaced. Daryl Baser, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Remember to check us out on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or you can take a look at our website at dunedintv.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan, thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.